Hi, everyone. It's the Catholic CEO, Henry Katarna. Welcome to our Exemplary Catholic Leader series. Today, we're going to be speaking with Lisa Canning. She is an author, a speaker, a coach, a mindset coach, and she's working on a very interesting summit that you're going to hear all about today. And before we do that, I just want to mention that it's the Catholic CEO, our website, thecatholicCEO.com. It's a place you should go because we try to help Catholic businesses be successful and Catholic. And we're also working on an important project of our own called The Catholic Economy. And that's an interesting event coming up May 3rd, a summit. And we're going to be talking a lot more about that in the future. But for the moment, let's get back then to our guest of the day, Lisa Canning. Lisa, welcome. How are you today?
I am so excited. It is such an honor to be here. I've listened to I don't know how many hours of your podcast, so it is a delight to be here on it.
Well, that's great. I'm very appreciative of your interest in what we are doing. And of course, people in our audience, and I know you have a tremendous audience that really respects and follows what you do. And so, today I'd like to talk to you about your Catholic faith, your Catholic journey, how you juggle it all, your events that are coming up, things you've done and accomplished. But let's begin, Lisa, by let's talk about, who are you and what do you do? You do a lot of things. If I do a website search on you, there's a lot of stuff. So what would you say you do?
Well, I mean, the short answer of it is I'm a mom of nine juggling a lot of things, but I'll tell you a little bit more than that. I got my start on HGTV. I had this extremely wonderful opportunity to host a show back in 2007. And it launched a platform that I did not know was possible. Back then, the idea of a lifestyle brand was very much in its infancy. Like there was not this sort of climate of you could take your phone and showcase your life and then sell things from it. There was a very sort of unique kind of thing I fell into. And as fast as my interior design and television career grew, my family size grew. So I've had nine gorgeous kids in 13 years. And so I started to begin feeling that immense pressure that many men and women, I'm sure, can relate to feeling when you're building a career. And regardless if you have one child or you have many, there are many pressures, challenges, all kinds of things when you're raising a family. And I had one group of people, sort of, if I can just label them like the TV people, were very much like, children are going to kill your career. Like, you really, like, you've only got so many years to be successful. You're only young for so long, all that kind of stuff. And then I had this other sort of group of people. I've been raised Catholic my whole life. And I had wonderful, very well-intentioned people in my life telling me, you should not be working, like you should be only at home. And so I kind of had this challenging, I want to say, chip on my shoulder, if I'm being honest, where I kind of felt like I wanted to prove it to both groups that I could be this extremely successful television and interior design personality and have a large family. And then I could prove to all of my well-intentioned friends and say to them, look, you can have a career and be so present to your children. And spoiler alert, what happens when we try to prove our worth to other people? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's exhausting. And what happened to me was that it ended me up in my minivan in a total meltdown. I affectionately call it my minivan meltdown in my book, The Possibility Mom, where I had just given birth to my fourth baby.
Mhm.
And days out of hospital, I was bringing her to a construction site. And I just remember that was sort of the pinnacle of like the apex point. Like it was my absolute implosion. I remember just literally screaming out to God in the car. My voice was hoarse. I had tears down my face, like
Mhm.
babies in the back, crying also, just being like, there's got to be another way. And so that's essentially what I do now. I like to sort of say I show women another way. I show Catholic women that it is, if you are called to business, it is very possible for you to build meaningful income in the margins of your motherhood. And that is in short what I do.
Well, it's, you're speaking to an issue that is very important. And I understand what you said at the beginning about, traditional Catholic teaching might say that a woman's place, a mother's place, is, in the home, teaching the children, homeschooling the children, and the husband, the father, will be working either in a family business, let's say, or a home-based business, or out in the workforce somewhere. And the two of you then fulfill your unitive and procreative role, to get yourselves and your family to heaven in that model. And yet that model does admit of exceptions, doesn't it? It admits of situations where people could do something different. So you went to this meltdown. This is an interesting thing, and I could see that this must have been a moment, a serious moment. How did you come out of that moment? What did you do? Like, you seem to have it figured out now. And I have to say, I look at all your publications and all the things that you do. I think you've got it figured out. What did you do?
It was a time of great reckoning. I think the first thing
Mhm.
I really had to do was have a little bit of awareness about my life. I
Mhm.
had no awareness, meaning I
Mhm.
was literally copying what successful people were doing around me,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
I was only copying a very specific type of success. So when I say literally copying, I mean I was looking at my fellow interior designers who lived in my city, who were serving similar type of, families and project sizes. And I was like, what purse is she carrying? What bag, or what blazer is she wearing? What kind of car is she driving? Like, I literally almost had this unconscious checklist of what it looked like to be successful. And so really that first place was awareness, having some sense of, are you living life by your own standard of success? That was the very first thing I had to really reckon with. And then from a more practical point of view, from just like a life management point of view, what I did like literally immediately emerging from my from my minivan was boundaries. So I just sort of said to myself, okay, you it's clear you have some skills for business. It's clear the Lord has given you something to do, like meaning
Yes.
I was very
Yes.
creative. I really loved what I was doing, but I hated that I was doing it at the expense of my health, my marriage, my children. So
Yeah.
I could sense that
Yeah.
there was this tension.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
what I did was I created some boundaries. So I said, what would it look like for me to be the person to always, or at that time it was, I gave myself a number of days, 3 days a week, 3 days out of the week, I am the one to pick up my children from school. And so I just
Mhm.
said to myself, okay, what would that look like? It would mean I would have to have no appointments later than 2 o'clock because of where I used to live in Toronto, Canada. Traffic was immense. And so I would just
Yes.
be like, okay, no appointments
Mhm.
past 2 o'clock.
Mhm.
What does that mean for the type of work I'm able to do
Mhm.
3 out of the 5 days? And it was honestly a lot of reverse engineering.
Mhm.
What is the kind of life I want? What does that look like in actual, if you were to enter everything in your life like appointments in a calendar, like what does that look like in practice? And so then I started doing things like, okay, well, I've really been neglecting my marriage because I've been working like 80, 90, 100 hours a week. So
Mhm.
what does it look like to have a weekly date night with my husband? And
Yes.
again, reverse engineer that. That means I need to have a babysitter between the hours of 6 and 9 p.m. and so on and so forth. So really in a most practical, like just very, very practical sense, I created some firm boundaries in my schedule.
It's a tool that we speak about a lot, those who are in the consulting and the mentoring business, and you and I are both similar in that regard. And in a secular sense, that's a tool that anybody could use. Did the cat like what about the Catholic faith aspect of it? How did that govern this? Did that stimulate this in the first place? How did that kick into the picture?
You know, I experienced a lot of guilt. I
Mhm.
felt like
Mhm.
there's a phrase in the coaching world called a manual. So meaning like, I have an iPhone, it has a set of instructions. We
Mhm.
can have sets of instructions, so to speak, for everything in our lives. And a lot of times when you have a point of tension, like for example, an argument with your father or an argument with a coworker, very often it's because you have a manual for how they should be behaving.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I had a manual for what Catholic motherhood should look like. And it
Mhm.
caused me immense guilt. So this whole dichotomy of you should be home and not working. And then I had more secular friends being like, oh, just put your kids in daycare. Like, and I
Mhm.
knew that I didn't want either extreme, but I
Yes.
had no idea how to navigate something different.
Mhm.
And so what I would say where my faith really played a part in this whole thing was discernment. I just had to be like, Lord, what is it you want for my life? And then I had to practice almost just like blinders up, like just like, okay, Lord, it's you and me. I'm no longer going to base success off of
Mhm.
copying my interior design friends.
Mhm.
So it's blinders up. And that, and, it continues. I'm 38 years old. I've got 9 kids. I continue to have that, like, blinders up, Lord.
Sure.
What are you calling of me in this exact moment? Like right here, right now. But that is how I would say how I grew in intimacy with the Lord. Absolutely. And this sort of, you know, just an abandonment, so to speak, of boxes. I think a lot of Catholic women can put themselves in boxes. Like, I will never work because
Mhm.
that will 100% take me away from my kids. Or I will homeschool because that means I will grow in holiness the most if I homeschool. And the reality is our Lord loves diversity. Like, he did
Mhm.
not create us
Mhm.
all to be these carbon copies of each other. And there's just so much evidence. Like, when you look at the lives of the saints and you look at various women mother saints who did different things, there's just
Yes.
so clearly a different pathway, a unique call to sanctity that we all must follow. Now, understanding what that is and living it out, this is a messier undertaking than, to be honest, I would prefer. Henry, I would prefer it if the Lord just told me, do this. And there are certain things that, our faith, our
Yeah.
Catholic faith, being close to the sacrament. So I'm not talking about things like that, but I would prefer it if there was just like a roadmap.
Right. Right. Some
But
night in a dream, some evening, our Lord speaks to you, and you have the answer, and it's there, and then you just simply execute.
that is part of the adventure, and that is part of the reliance on God. I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned in my more recent work as a mindset coach. So I became a professionally trained Catholic mindset coach. So really understanding, it's very much based in cognitive behavioral therapy, understanding that your thoughts have an impact on the way you feel
Mhm.
and the
Yes.
way you act. And so very much a fruit and a gift of that training was just like beginning to understand that there's potential and there's possibility, and so many ways your life can go, and so much of your ability to trust the Lord and to participate with him starts with your thoughts.
So you have talked about total abandonment, which is a concept that you can read great saints, you can read church fathers, you can really understand what that means. Total abandonment. You also have said, Lisa, that you saw yourself, you recognize your own situation, you've come out of that in a certain way. I can detect that there's some pressure on you still from time to time. The mothers, the moms, the people that come to you, you have a big following, and the people are somehow inspired first, I guess, by your story. And then what do you tell them, though? What do you teach people to do? Moms that are busy, large families, and so on. What do you teach them? What does it take to do this?
Well, number one is this theme of discernment, that
Yes.
you've got to discern what that looks like. How do we discern? We stay really close to the Lord. We pray. We stay close to the sacraments. And then, of course, I love my spiritual director. I really should be paying him. Like, he should have a monthly retainer for the amount of drama he must tolerate from me. So, really, guides in your life who can speak wisdom into you, I think, are really
Mhm.
important. So, number one is discernment. And then number two is, what does this look like in practical application?
Mhm.
So for moms who are called to business, what does it look like to create a schedule that protects your priorities? I created an online course called Conquer Your Calendar, and that's basically the thesis statement of it, is the way that a mom does not have enormous guilt about the way she spends her time is to ensure that the things that are important to her are actually captured in her day, her week, her month. So just again, for example, a mom who wants to homeschool her children,
Mhm.
there is nothing to say that if she, so number one, if she's discerned it, I'm called to start a business from home in addition to homeschooling my children. In practical application, what does this look like? It looks like I budget 4 hours a day or whatever is appropriate for
Yes.
homeschooling my kids.
Yes.
So let's just
Yeah.
say from 9 till 12, I'm homeschooling my children. And then it looks like, okay, where else in the day? Like, am I prioritizing other things? My own spiritual health, my physical health, the health of my home, all those kinds of things. So those
Mhm.
have a place. But surely in the day, if you are called to it, there might be an hour. Like, and I
Mhm.
believe a business
Mhm.
can begin in as little as 15 minutes. And if you
Yes.
want to, if people want to argue me, I invite you, DM me at Lisa Canning on Instagram and we can argue about it there. But I really believe then as little as 15 minutes a day, you
Mhm.
can begin a business. And then and this might not be correct what I'm about to say because there's so many exceptions and whatnot, but what I sort of look at is that 15 minutes a day of consistent action. It might take you a little bit longer to get to the goal, but you'll get to the goal if you take that consistent action. Now, where I'm about to refute myself is that that's not actually always the case. Sometimes there are some business models where you actually can like experience speedy results. I think of network marketing. Okay, so I'm
Yes.
a beauty
Yes.
counter consultant, which means that there is a cosmetic line, a skincare line that I sell. I don't create the product. Like, it's not mine. It is shipped, warehouse, distributed by somebody else.
Mhm.
I simply introduce it to people. And
Mhm.
so that's an example of in 15 minutes a day with
Mhm.
intentional activities. And now that's the key thing. What is the intentional activity you're doing?
Yep.
Regardless if you're a network marketer or not, I really, this is the thing I will hang my hat on. This is the hill. I will, whatever I always mix up analogies. Henry, my husband makes fun of me all the time, but this is the thing I will say.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter how much time to me, and especially in the beginning, it does not matter how much time you invest in your business. What matters to me is that are you consistently working strategically, and then you can't help but have results, like even if it's only in 15-minute increments, it is possible. So discernment, what are you called to? What does this look like in practical application in your life? And then the third thing, and this is the most important thing to me, is your mindset. And it's a mindset where you are constantly working to relent of ungodly self reliance.
Mhm.
Now, this is the part that was so difficult for me to reconcile and understand as an entrepreneur. It still is, if I'm being really honest. And so, for
Mhm.
anyone who's not sort of familiar with this term, self reliance, I just think there is a tendency for an entrepreneur to be a little bit type A, to be a little bit choleric, maybe in their temperament. A lot of entrepreneurs are go getter, hustlers, so to speak. Like, I'm using air quotes for the word hustle. But, oftentimes, if you're going to start your own business, you have a little bit of gumption. You might have a little bit of like chutzpah. Like, you kind of like, you probably like planning and control in some degree. This can be very challenging when we are talking in the realm of Catholic principled business, because you have got to constantly, the same way that I think is not easier, but we talk about this, like, how do you surrender your marriage to God? How do you surrender your motherhood to God? How do you surrender, your entire life? My experience was that I was like, yep, I can surrender all those things. But I was keeping my business very protected. Like, I was
Mhm.
like, no, Lord, I'm good. Like, I'm
Mhm.
good.
Mhm.
I have all the online courses. I have all the experience. I've got the funnels built. Like, I'm good. And I think for the entrepreneur, it's essential. It's essential that we just let go of that graspiness, to speak even in just more secular terms.
Mhm.
You'll hear from secular coaches to be detached from the outcome. So it's a business principle that we need to be detached from the outcome too much fear of failure and too much holding so tightly onto control is really going to inhibit a business. But there's this spiritual aspect of like literally entering into that space of things unseen, as we read in Hebrews. Faith is the belief in things unseen. In our weakness, to quote Corinthians, we are made strong. That is the third piece. So, this mindset piece is really, really imperative, whether you're in business or not. How are you thinking? And are you focused on your self-reliant efforts, your attachment, or are you actively working every day to surrender it all to God?
You know, what you've said about the mindset, it rings true. I mean, I couldn't, music to my ears, because in our work in the Catholic CEO, we often come across people who, whether they're starting a business or trying to expand it or fix a problem in an existing business, they're stuck. It's procrastination. They get stuck. The weight of the entire business is on their shoulders. And so we teach something like you do as well, where we work backwards to move forwards, break it into small bite-sized tasks, stick it into your calendar here and there, so that today, when you get up, you look at your calendar, all you're worried about is getting that task done today. And so that's kind of a tool set that you and I are both familiar with, and we operate on that basis. But you're introducing something that's interesting for the Catholic mother, father, someone who's doing a home-based business. We can bring in an element of faith to this, where we give over to our Lord rather than keep it in ourselves. I like that. Does that work? It's a rhetorical question in a sense, because I believe it works. But how does it work in the minds of your clients and the people that follow you? Does it actually work? What can they actualize this? Can they actually do it?
I would say it's very, very difficult. And the reason why I'm saying it is because, and this is my observation, I welcome people to sort of disagree with me, but my experience is that secular coaching is so self-focused. So
Yes.
you'll hear,
Yes.
and I'm not even trying to criticize. It's just an observation. Like, you got this, all of these sort of like hustle hard, you got this, you can do it. And again, you can do it is a great thought to think. It's not an inaccurate thought to think. But where a Catholic person in business just needs to be so mindful is that it graces the change agent, the potential and opportunity to be strengthened, right? I have so many examples from my own life, but like, let's just even use the example of quote unquote coming out as a Catholic mindset coach. So I never
Yes.
sought out to call myself a Catholic coach. And in fact, I had so much drama about it. I was never ashamed of my Catholic faith. I was never sort of like hiding it. It was very evident that you could tell I was a Catholic if you interacted with me online or obviously in person. So it wasn't like I was trying to hide it. I just sort of, when I wrote my book, The Possibility Mom, in 2019, I just sort of felt called to make it an accessible book. My audience up until that point had journeyed with me from HGTV and interior design. So I wasn't really speaking to a Catholic audience at that time. But then I got into mindset work and I started asking these questions. I started asking these questions of like, when does this become too self-focused at the almost not necessarily at the exclusion of God, but maybe like, where you're kind of just like self-reliant. I'm going to do this, like grin and bear it. And so I just started asking these questions about the role of God's will, grace. I started to get into the work of Thomas Aquinas and my mentors, Aaron and Matt Ingold at Metanoia Catholic, who
Yes.
provided
Yes.
my training. And I just started to realize no true transformation is possible without Christ Jesus at the center. And for some people listening, this might seem obvious to you. Like I don't know how else to explain it. Like, yes, of course, duh. Like,
Yeah.
but I had been consuming so much personal development from secular sources, which again we can gain so much from. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to criticize,
Mhm.
but it was almost like I had treated personal development as like separate from my Catholic identity. And when I saw almost like a clearer picture, you know, when you go to the eye doctor and they keep adjusting the glasses until you get like a perfect prescription, it was like I could see the world so clearly and I couldn't go back. Like I literally was just like, I cannot go back. I can no longer coach in a way that is not completely authentically Catholic. And so that's what changed everything for me. So to be very honest with you, I don't remember the original question. Okay, what it does it work? Does it work to be uh, uh to reject self-reliance? Honestly, this might be an incorrect answer. I don't know, but it has to work. Like there's
Yeah.
no other option
Yeah.
because I can tell you what the other option is. The other option is a lot of hustle. The other option is a lot of self-condemnation. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of adrenal fatigue, if I'm being really honest, you know, like, and that's what I was observing in my interior design career. And that's what got me to the point of my minivan meltdown. Like, everyone around me was miserable. Like, everyone around me, at least that's what I was observing, was suffering from adrenal fatigue. Like, I'm talking like
Yeah.
real practical physical ailments because of this obsession with, you know, rocking it in business. And so that's my answer, is that it has to work because it's the truth.
Sure. This again, I could tell you that I've experienced this for 25 years. I was a coach and a mentor, a consultant. I ran peer groups for large, major organizations that had peer groups of CEOs. And we also had one-on-one sessions. So we'd have these group sessions, but one-on-one sessions. And I can think of 3 or 4 organizations that I was part of where we did this. You know, Lisa, they occasionally somebody would come to me in a one-on-one meeting, and largely a male audience. There were a few women in the group, but largely men, and they would be in their sort of mid 45, 50, 55 years old. They would say to me, I've got all the toys now. I'm getting wealthy. My business is successful, but but what's it for? Why am I doing this? And then they would also sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes say they're estranged from their family, or they're having trouble with their marriage, their relationships, their friendships, their business is all consuming. And then yet at the same time, what's it all for? So this is a real problem. And it's one of the reasons we started the Catholic CEO, because I too, like you, I can now freely speak about faith and how it interacts with business. Back in the days when I was doing more secular consulting, I would, with occasionally with people, you could talk about a spiritual dimension to it, a transcendent, but you would get trapped into kind of the new age stuff. They would immediately respond, because everyone seems to be programmed this way. Well, I'm spiritual but not religious, and then they would deviate the topic off. But this is very interesting, and it's a phenomenal pattern that you're explaining here. And so when people come to you as a mindset coach, or just in the other work that you do that inspires moms and women in particular, I think, and I don't know your audience that well, but I think it's largely, would this be right? It's largely women and moms.
Catholic moms who want to pursue their dreams. I coach a lot of women in business as well, but moms, primarily Catholic moms.
Right. And so they are then, you could say they are worried about all these things. And in practice, your message to them is that you can be Catholic and you can be successful in a certain worldly sense, but the two have to be integrated. And so when you do that, do you find that, what's the corresponding message back to you? I mean, they'll take your information, all of your friends and clients and people who follow you, they'll take it all in and they'll execute it, and they might stumble here and there. What do they say back to you? Do they say that this is actually working and Lisa, help me do this better? Or what's the message from them? Because you could be transformational in the world.
They say the fight is worth it. I would say that.
Mm-hmm.
They say the fight is worth it. I think a lot of women offer back to me, they had no idea what they were capable of. So again, I mentioned manuals earlier. Like, they had a manual for how their life should be, and it was a very narrow, tight little box. And so I'm often offered back the feedback that like I had no idea the potential. And I guess the comment that makes me the most excited is the freedom that moms feel for whatever reason. I think, and I felt like this as well in the beginning of my mothering journey. Um, a lot of moms feel trapped,
Mhm.
and they feel and there are some practical realities, when you have a nursing infant or a lot of really small kids. I think one of the things that's unique to Catholics versus our Protestant brothers and sisters is, many of us are open to life at any time.
Yes.
Comes with some very interesting, chaotic realities.
Yes.
Like when you have
Yes.
3 kids all in diapers, your house is upside down,
Yeah.
and you're feeling called to a business. It can feel like, but my house is a disaster. How on earth could I add one more thing? And so the feedback that I love hearing is just like, you show me, or you've helped me to see what is truly possible. And I mean, and that's just, it's my favorite word. It's why my book is called The
It's
Possibility Mom.
possible. Yeah, that's
It,
right.
and sometimes all it takes is a friend on the journey to show you, hey, like, I think you're making this really hard on yourself. Like you're kind of doing this in a way that's actually causing you unnecessary suffering. One of the, I mentioned my spiritual director. He's a wonderful priest in Toronto, Canada, and I'm so grateful for him. And in a recent session, he helped me to see this, that there's two kinds of suffering. There's the suffering that the Lord allows to happen with his permissive will, and he will give you the grace to deal. And I see that in so many different phases in our life. A thing my husband and I are very passionate in talking about is mental illness in marriage. He's had clinical depression in the past, and I can see that so present, like this grace, like the Lord will give you the grace to deal with that suffering. But then there's another kind of suffering, and it's the suffering we create for ourselves due to attachment. And so, what I see, and this was my life, I was attached to success in business. And so it was like attachment to that at all costs, and like prove to everybody that you can do it all. And that did not serve me. And I think some moms struggle with attachment to potentially a manual they have for what Catholic motherhood should look like. And when you free yourself of that as well, and again, it comes down to discernment. When you discern what the Lord has called for your unique life, there is so much freedom, fun, and possibility.
So when you work on the concept of detachment, and you're talking about, let's say, a woman, your audience is largely women. They're looking at all of the pressures that they face. As you said a moment ago, open to life means that it's not in your schedule; it's on God's good time, so to speak. Other people in the life, like the husband and the spouse, and possibly older children, what's their role in creating the possibility mom? Let's say the possibility mom decides to start a home-based business. She's got a special sauce, or she's got some kind of a process or a service that she offers. Okay, dear, speaking to the husband, we're going to do a home-based business. Meanwhile, the husband is busy. He's got his own, job, and he's away from home, perhaps in the daytime, and the mother's at home. What about that whole bigger group than just the possibility mom?
Hmm. So one of the things I love to explore, and I have a feeling this will end up being some kind of future work, but I love looking at our history of how moms and dads worked at home. So we used to historically be more cottage industry based or
Yes.
agricultural based. So you would
Yes.
have a mom and a dad creating something from their home, and the kids came along for the ride. Like they were working in the fields. Maybe they went to school, but there was an expectation that even if they weren't in school, you did things around the farm, you did things around the home based business, right? I think of the parents of Therese of Lisieux and
Yes.
their lace business. Like they would have meetings in the home. The children would sometimes come with them to meetings. Like, and so what I'm getting at here is there was a generation who never uttered the phrase work-life balance.
Yes.
I want everybody to really hear that. There was a generation that never uttered the phrase work-life balance. It was integrated. And there's a distinction I want to make around leisure, right? So I'm sure that
Mhm.
there's that generation that I'm referring to would be tired and would want leisure, but there was not this divide that we see today. I sometimes hear from moms in my life almost an obsessive approach to like, well, I've got to get the balance right. Like I've got to just like it's got to be balanced. And I'm like, I just don't know if that's a reasonable, like, or even attainable. Like, what does that even mean? Does it mean like if you work 60 minutes, you
Mhm.
60 minutes with your family? Like, and reality just is not like that. The approach that I love and the approach of, many of my peers and people that I look to and that I respect in this is this concept of integration.
Yes.
What does it look like for work and motherhood to not be binary? Like, meaning that you
Yes.
have to pick one or the other. So, let me give you a practical example. I coach moms who sometimes feel like if there's trouble at home, I have to quit my business entirely. So, one of my children is like, this is an example. One of my children is currently having some kind of, challenge. Maybe it's physical, maybe it's behavioral, but I observe almost this like absolute binary approach. It's like, well, if the home is failing, I have to quit business completely. Or if the home is failing, it's because I'm away in my business. And I just like what I want to offer, what I want to suggest, and what I want to like scream from the rooftops is what if it doesn't have to be binary? Like what if a child is having a challenge and you're in a season of I really just I'm exhausted and my clearly this child needs me. What if instead of quitting, you are simply taking a pause?
Yes. The
Or
pause button.
or the pause, even that, if we were to define pause, there's so many different ways a pause
Mhm.
can look. A
Mhm.
pause for some entrepreneurs means they're pulling in more help. So they're hiring more people so that they can pause, but the business can continue. Or a pause for some people is going to look like an actual pause. I remember a friend of mine, uh, she makes jewelry, and she just
Mhm.
was like, we've had a family crisis, everything is paused. She just put that up on Instagram. Family crisis, we are
Mhm.
pausing.
Mhm.
And that was the pause. But
Mhm.
she came back. And so
Mhm.
I guess that's the thing I really want to sort of challenge people to see in the same way that when you were working on a farm in a generation previous, you had natural cycles on a farm. You had cycles of like seeding and maybe like seasons when babies like baby animals were being born, and then you had other seasons where it was more dormant or what have you. And just that there can truly be this approach that is integrated. Now, what it looks like in practice again is so different, I think, for each family. It requires flexibility, it requires a rejection of manuals. So, like, if your
Yes.
mom did it this way, maybe you're doing it totally different. It requires a lot of thinking about child care, child rearing. Are you is there help in the home to do things like domestic things so that you can be present to children. I'll never forget this. Every mother in the world became a homeschooling mom due to the pandemic at one point, right?
Yes,
Um,
it's true.
but
Yeah.
I electively became a homeschooling mom for a very short period. And I realized some very unique things during that period. But what I realized was I found it very challenging to homeschool. At the time, I was giving birth to my eighth child when we were attempting homeschooling, and I just realized like it was very difficult for me to both homeschool and take care of my house. Like I just remember being like, I've got to figure this out. There's got to be a better strategy because I had like I'm doing math with my oldest child who was in grade 5 or something at the time, and I could hear my toddlers taking every single box of cereal and pasta out of my pantry, and I could hear them going clink 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 all over the floor. And so
Right.
again, what am I trying
Right.
to exemplify here? It requires some strategy, requires some thinking about the practical aspect of keeping children safe and entertained or what have you, or involving them in the work. There are times when you need deep work, and I mean this on all fronts. There are times when I need deep work in my business, like this, for example.
Mhm.
I am childless at this moment, but literally up until the very last minute when we hit record, I was nursing my infant.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
similarly, there are times when we need to be like undivided with our children. Like I'm at the stage, my oldest is 13. It's necessary. Like it is necessary to have these one-on-one conversations at the stage that I'm at in parenting. So again, I'm not trying to say that you kind of just like juggle it all at the same time, that you have your computer open at all hours. That's not the kind of integration I'm talking about. But it's this rejection that I'm choosing one over the other. That's what I'd like to propose.
Yeah, that's a thesis that I think it resonates with a lot of people. It's certainly resonating with me. I mean, I grew up in a family business. My grandfather, my uncles, my dad, they all worked in a property investment business, and we learned a lot of skills and crafts at an early age. I did my first fence painting job when I was 5 years old. I've been told. I hardly remember it, but I earned, I think, 25 cents or some number for that job. But the grandfather, in his talks, he did this integration thing. He wouldn't have articulated it like you have just done so well, but he lived that life, and he taught us this dinner table conversations at times about the business and about business principles and practices and things like that, teaching entrepreneurial behavior to the grandchildren and the children. But at other times in the dinner table conversation, well, about family matters or about spiritual matters. So not binary, as you said, not jumbled all together, but smoothly integrating, flowing back and forth between the business imperative. And so what I wanted to ask you about resisting the culture. So he wouldn't have said that either, my grandfather. He would not have said resisting the culture was his motive. His motive was to keep the family together. And then the income and the wealth and whatever will come from that. And it did. But his primary purpose was keeping the family together. Can we resist the culture? Because the culture presses in on us as Catholics increasingly. And a lot of people want to start a business. So can what you teach help us resist the culture?
It is my great hope, my great expectation of the Lord, that I can help Catholic mothers become millionaires from home. Why do I want to do this? Because I want moms at home with their kids. I lived the life of running around. I lived the life of, being somewhere at 9 o'clock, and then, oh my gosh, now I'm late for the next appointment. And oh my gosh, now I'm, and like, oh my gosh, he forgot his lunchbox, and I've got to run back all the way up to school. And it's like a 30-minute, I lived that life, and it caused near adrenal failure. There's only a certain level of stress that I think
Yes.
a mom can
Yes.
take on her body. I think there's already a baseline level of juggle that a mom does. It just, we can't, no more. And so I think that for me, not that we are supposed to live lives of constant peace, right? Obviously, like
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
are. How do we grow in intimacy with the Lord? By trusting him. Struggle is just a part of life that we cannot
Yes.
argue with. So I'm not arguing for this idyllic situation.
Yeah.
I can tell you so many stories of doing this, being in a recording, having a child puking on the other side of my door or banging on the door. Somebody asked me recently on my Instagram, they were like, what's the most embarrassing thing that a child has done when you've been live? And oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I've had children on the other side of my computer with written flashcards trying to get my attention. Literally, and literally, like, you'd think, okay, somebody's hurt, so hold up that sign. Can I play Nintendo? Like, and I'm just like, get out of my, anyway, but
That's great. I love it.
I'm not trying to say it's idyllic, no, and that we are supposed to be peaceful all the time, but to remove elective stress is so beautiful to me, because what I think it can, not always, because our mindset, big part of this is all mindset, but what it can provide more room for is at home peace, at home togetherness, the room for those one-on-one conversations. Like it's just, again, I think we have to live in reality, and we have to live strategically, that we only have so many hours in a day. And when you have, maybe multiple children and multiple things that you prioritize, we have to live in the reality of how does that get executed. And so I'm on this mission to have moms be incredible moms. And for those who are called to business, a business can make you happy. A business can provide you incredible endorphins. There's so much satisfaction if you're called to it in the problem solving, and then of course helping people. And what can this do? It can fuel you with energy so you can be present with your children. I used to feel so guilty, Henry, for loving this kind of work, for loving making money, for loving solving problems. And then I would see what it would do to me. So I'm talking about, like, I would be on a call like this, and I would come out and I could run a marathon. I could play with the kids. I could take on all of the challenges because my cup had been filled.
Yes.
And so for me, rejecting the culture is in on one hand very practical. I just love the idea of a mom having peace, of a mom not having to hustle so hard in a day. And then on another hand, rejecting the culture is like just like a mom who is full and feels free and feels, and this is an interesting one. I don't know, the Holy Spirit, I feel like, is prompting me to say it, but I've got 9 kids. Was I always confident about having so many children? Absolutely not. And I talk to a lot of moms who feel fear around having another baby because of finances.
Yes. Yes.
And so I don't know what it is. Like I just have this desire to help women never be afraid of getting pregnant because of money. And when you're building a business, even if you pause it, you have an asset you can return to, like, at any time. Like, and that's what's so exciting too about the internet. And again, I'm not trying to paint it as idyllic. Believe you me, there are
Yeah.
so many ways that we have to show up and fight, in our mental spiritual battles. But there is so much potential right now for a woman, a mom, to truly pick up her cell phone and make money online. It is just such a remarkable, fun way. And if women are called to it, like, let's just get you the skills that you need so that you're not spinning your wheels and not being a good steward of your time.
Yeah. And that's a busy mother of a medium-sized family or a large family or a growing family has to be highly organized. That's my observation. And I'm not a mother. I've been a parent. I am a parent and a grandparent, but I can see that a mother who runs the household, teaches the children, and all of these things is highly organized. And when they're highly organized, I think I get your point. You could pick up that phone and you could make some money, and you just need to know what the tools are, and you need somebody to guide you through it, and off you go. And it can be done to supplement family income. It can be done, to solve emergencies, or it can be done for lots of good and just reasons. And this is the positive thing. So I love that you continue to say through, this entire discussion we've had, the possibility is there. And I know that's one of your very great monikers is that word possibility. Possible. It's possible, it's likely, and it's something that I guess it's guided by the Holy Spirit, and with the prayer life and with the spiritual life, it can be done. What do you think of multi-generational businesses? Can you start a family business at home and then have your children and your grandchildren kind of all around you, not necessarily living in the same household, but the multi-generational household is a thing these days that is it's drawing Catholics increasingly, but so is this multi-generational business thing. And I'm a product of that myself. But do you find that that's coming along in some of your clients?
I think it is so interesting to ponder generational wealth.
Yes.
Where imagine your child comes to you with a business idea and you can be like, here, we're not going to go to the bank to fund it. Here is, I've heard another expert call it almost like a family bank account. Like,
Mhm.
I love this concept of being able to fund the projects of my children, being able to teach them problem solving skills that come as a necessity through
Mhm.
entrepreneurship. And then, of course, if they're called to it, and like, let's just be very like blatant. Not everyone is called to entrepreneurship. Like it is
Yeah.
truly like a
Yeah.
calling. But if your children are called to it, I can think of like just like how wonderful it could be to be collaborative and to have people close. And again, even just the natural or I love entrepreneurship for families because
Yeah.
you are not tied to an external, yes, there are obviously external things that you're tied to, but you largely can dictate, okay, if I want to run my business only 9 months of the year and then take 3 months, where it looks very different than the other 9 months, you have the flexibility to do that.
Yeah.
And so I just think there's just so much potential and possibility. And I love the idea of generational wealth.
Yeah. I do too. And I know that we have a mutual friend, our friend Donna Crombie, has, she was telling me the story of her son, who is, I think, 9 years old, if I remember correctly. And he goes around and he collects, junk from car part shops and garages and things like that. And he hauls these things home with the help of his parents. I think they bring the family van and so on. But he's made a little bit of business and he made a few $100s. Well, it's a story of family entrepreneurship, and it teaches that we can be self-sufficient. And of course, because the the family is the fundamental unit of society, we know that. If we can stay together in some ways by an economic uh, link, you could say, we can then not, even if the word isn't resist the culture, we can be independent enough to then practice our faith, worry about ourselves getting to heaven and teaching the children the faith and so on. So I too, I'm a proponent of the family business. I love that idea. The Catholic CEO itself is a family business, and it's an apostolate as well. And so, we're believers in that. So let's think about, where do we go from here? Let me ask you this: what's next on the horizon for you in the next, let's say, 2 to 3 years? What's your plan? What are you planning to do?
I was recently asked, like, where's the Lord blessing your business right now? And so, right now, Wealth Without Guilt is my group coaching experience for Catholic moms. And in that group coaching experience, I offer live mindset coaching and then all the tactical, like just the practical, how do you build a business online? And so, I would love to see Wealth Without Guilt producing entrepreneurs who are on their way to a million, like their first million. That is sort of my, like, and I hope lots of different stages below that, but I hope that I hope I'm launching women who have made their first $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, like, and beyond. And like I said, on their way to a million. Um, I hope I also have helped women who want to be open to life be open to life.
Yes.
It's causing me some emotion because I can remember when I was in a more secular field and feeling so nervous when I would get pregnant.
Mhm.
Like, and because
Mhm.
the first thing that would come to my mind would be like, how am I going to tell, XYZ that I'm pregnant? Like, what is this going to do to my job? And
Mhm.
in the United States, I've learned that this is more and more challenging because
Yeah.
many employers don't offer a maternity leave, or you're coming back to work like 6 weeks after your baby. I talk to so many women who tell
Mhm.
me, like, I would love to have my baby with me while I'm working.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I think that's, and again, I don't know what this looks like. I don't know, but
Mhm.
I just would love it if a mom feels like another baby is what the Lord wants for them, like they've discerned, and it's, again,
Mhm.
it's an individual decision, obviously, like with a couple, but for a mom to just be like, I have no fear because I know financially I have options, I have flexibility, I don't feel trapped. I think that would be very interesting in the next couple of years. I really, for me, the vision I have is I want to link arms with women and men, but I want to link arms and build a culture where a mom feels like she can build the domestic church and follow what the Lord has called for her life with great abundance. It's really, and make some money doing it if that's what they feel called to.
It sounds great. I love that vision of where you're going. You know, it fits with. I'm gonna press you. You know, publicly on air right now. I'm going to say that we have the Catholic Economy Project. We need you and others like you to be part of that, because this will inspire people. It'll inspire Catholics. It'll inspire Catholic women to become successful in the business sense, while at the same time practicing the Catholic faith in total faithfulness, but doing it in a way that creates that serenity and peace of mind for the family. It can be done. And I think that's something that I know you're headed towards that. I know, Lisa, we could go on for another hour on this. And of course we can't, because of the time schedules that we all have and the expectations of viewers and so on. But I'd like to maybe let's bring it to a conclusion by telling us what's going on with you. Where do we find you? What events have you got? What's going on?
Well, depending when this recording comes out, I have got an amazing, amazing free online summit, the Possibility Mom Business Summit, April 29th to May 1st. It is completely free and it features 60 interviews, all on the things that we've talked about in this interview. You have done an interview. You're going to join me live, so people can depending on time of recording, you might be able to come live. and it is truly my hope for this summit is the mom who feels like there's no way it can be done. I hope she listens to it and is like, watch me do it. And then of course, come and join the party over on Instagram at Lisa Canning. That's the best place to find everything that is sort of topical and like, top of mind. And then my website is lisacanning.ca.
Well, that conference, that summit's going to be exciting. I look forward to participating with you. May God bless you and your family and all of your followers and your whole empire, shall we say. May God richly bless you. Thanks for being with us today. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. It's the Catholic CEO, Henry Katarna. And join us next time. Thanks for being with us today.